Dream Fellows of 2013. Yay! 2 years ago, the NYSC and the Fund for Public Advocacy created this fellowship out of the recognition that undocumented youth had double, triple the barriers to higher education and developing their future careers than their peers due to their immigration status. They were barred from federal and state financial aid, and they were barred from working legally. As an organization that promotes immigrant integration through education and integration into the mainstream economy, it was a no-brainer that a leadership development program specifically targeting those undocumented students would help them. But as you will hear today, the real story behind the fellowship is the degree to which the fellows' leadership would change our organization, our immigrant rights field, and our city and nation as a whole. This year's fellowship comes at a particularly intense time of change and possibility. The cohort of 14 students started their fellowship 6 months after President Obama announced the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. That is a program that provides temporary relief from deportation and work permits for eligible undocumented youth. All but one fellow qualified for deferred action. One fellow is not eligible because she arrived in the U.S. 4 months after her 16th birthday, the cutoff age for deferred action. Regardless of deferred action eligibility, none of the students who received DACA, deferred action, are eligible for federal or state financial aid. While barriers remain for undocumented youth with or without deferred action, many will agree that this year, 2013, is the year for immigration reform. Many of the fellows have traveled to Washington, D.C. or met locally with members of Congress to share their family stories and to push for immigration reform to keep their families together. They have also traveled to Albany to push for the New York State Dream legislation, which would provide tuition assistance. Together with the last year's cohort of 10 Dream Fellows, these fellows have become an indispensable voice for change and hope in Washington, D.C. and in Albany. So, before we hear from the fellows, I would like to introduce Paula Gavin, the Executive Director of the Fund for Public Advocacy. Paula has galvanized the Office of the Fund for Public Advocacy with her passion and her laser-like focus to get things done. It's Paula Gavin who brought the effectiveness of her leadership to our program and is actually responsible for spearheading the fundraising campaign that raised the scholarships for each one of our fellows. So she will be, she'll give us brief remarks and also describe the specific components of the internship, the fellowship that comprises the program. So Paula, welcome.
Thank you so much. The Fund for Public Advocacy is honored and really very delighted to be the sponsor of the Dream Fellowship. It's a really important program to the Fund for Public Advocacy because of who you are, the fellows. And so I am very grateful to the New York Immigration Coalition, but I'm mostly grateful to each of you for your leadership and determination. As Chunghwa said, we started the Dream Fellowship last year, and it's comprised first of scholarship. Each of our 10 scholarship winners received a $2,000 scholarship, which was provided through donors of the Fund for Public Advocacy. In addition, you have received, and the fellows will continue to receive, leadership development, and finally the internship for the entire semester. So as CUNY students, you have very many demands, but I know that the Dream Fellowship has added to those, but in a good way, with the components of our scholarship, the components of leadership development, as well as the internship. I was thinking a lot about the nation's leadership and the need in our nation for great leaders. And I would like to say that the fellows, each of you, possess both the talents, the intelligence, the determination, the persistence, the drive to be one of those great leaders in our nation. If you think about our nation today, it needs diversity of opinion, it needs diversity of background, and it needs a global awareness. What better to say how proud the Fund for Public Advocacy is to be a part of your life, to be a part of this program, but to really endorse the fact that our nation needs you as great leaders, and you certainly are on your way. So thank you so much, and best wishes to each of you.
Thank you, Paula. And now you're here from all of our fellows who have been working hard at their leadership development programs, and today we'll just get a glimpse of who they are and what they're doing. So our first speaker is Mehdi Marawi. Would you like to come up, Mehdi?
Hello everyone, my name is Mehdi Marawi. I am a Dream Fellow. My family and I came to the United States in 1998. I was 7 at the time, and we came to America simply because my father wanted a better future for us. And I remember growing up in America, my father always told me 3 things. And he told me that, 1, to take my education seriously, 2, that he loves me, and 3, to not tell anyone that I was undocumented. And growing up, I never knew what it meant to be undocumented until senior year in high school. In senior year, I was on the beach channel rowing team. I was on the crew team. And I remember all of my teammates, they were applying for colleges and they were receiving financial aid. And one day my coach, he came up to me, he said, "Mehdi, what college are you gonna go to?" And I told him, "I'm not going to college. College is not for me." And he told me, "If you don't apply to go to college, I'm not gonna let you compete this year." And so I really wanted to compete, so I applied to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And I got accepted. And the day I received the acceptance letter was the happiest day of my life. And it was also one of the saddest, the most painful. And a few days after I received my acceptance letter, my coach came up to me again and he asked me, "Mehdi, what college are you gonna go to?" And I remember I broke down in front of my coach, in front of my teammates, and I said, "I am undocumented." That was the first time I said it to anyone, besides my family members. And I told them I can't go to college. I can't afford to go to college. My parents cannot afford to send me to college. And then I ran away to my locker room and I cried. And I cried because I felt embarrassed. And I cried because I felt ashamed. And I cried because I felt afraid. And while I was crying, 2 teammates came up to me and they said, "You're gonna go to college, but we're gonna help you." And so they did, help me raise the money. And for weeks, we had fundraisers and we collected donations. And that's how I raised the money for my first year at John Jay. And since then, I made it this far. I am a senior now at John Jay, and I am studying public administration. And I made it this far simply by working hard, taking my education seriously, and applying for essay contests and private scholarships. And that's how I became a Dream Fellow. And the Dream Fellow has helped my family and I in many ways. But my most memorable moment as a Dream Fellow was March 13th. And on that day, my family and I, well, my younger sister and I, my 17-year-old sister, and I went to Washington and we joined the Keeping Families Together bus tour. And we joined 500 families from across the nation, and we advocated for comprehensive immigration reform. And in DC, I shared my story with the press for the first time, and I stated that I came from New York to Washington to advocate for justice. For justice for myself, justice for my family, and justice for the immigrant community. And I also stated that both my parents are currently placed on deportation proceedings, and that I have 2 younger sisters. One sister is 17 years old and she is undocumented, and my other sister is 8 years old and she is a US citizen. And that my 17-year-old sister and I came to Washington to advocate to keep our family together. And that night, when we got back to New York, my sister came up to me and she broke down and she started crying. And she told me that she's ready to come out of the shadows and tell her friends that she is undocumented. And she did. She created a YouTube video in which she announced to all of her friends that she is undocumented and that she can no longer remain silent about the injustice caused by our broken immigration system. And she said that she's coming out of the shadows because she wants to advocate for justice for the 11 million undocumented Americans currently living in the US. And I just want to say that I am extremely proud of my younger sister for having the courage to come out of the shadows and share her story and raise her voice and join me in my advocacy for justice and challenge social injustice. And also I want to say that I am sincerely grateful for the people in my life, for their love and for their support. And I want to say that I'm sincerely grateful for the Dream Fellowship, not only for giving me this opportunity to continue my education and fulfill my dream, but also for giving me the opportunity to advocate, to keep my family together. So thank you.
Benny, thank you so much. That was such an inspiring story, and we'll continue to go down to DC with you. Our next fellow is Ivy Tang Lee. Ivy, like to come up?
Hi everyone, my name is Ivy. I'm going to begin by telling you a bit about my personal story and going into the influence that I've been able to give through this Dream Fellowship. My family and I decided to come to the United States when I was 7 years old. My brother and my father left a year earlier to settle before my sister, my mother, and I came. When I asked my mother why we left China, they will always say that it's for a better life, meaning for me, my siblings. We came to the United States and we finally landed in Chinatown, and I remember the apartment being maybe half the size of our living room back in China, the entire apartment. And I remember seeing rats for the first time and slowly learning to see it as a neighbor almost. And the lifestyle and the change that I endured through that was something that I will always remember growing up as an immigrant. We landed in Chinatown and we lived our lives working. My mother worked in the factory, so after school, my brother would pick me up and go to the factory because my family couldn't afford babysitters. And again, the stories were always filled with cat-sized rats and constantly having to hide because children aren't allowed to factories. Life was tough, but it was fulfilling because by the end of the day, I still got to sit together with my mom and dad, my brother, sister, and eat dinner. And that was something as simple as that was the finale of my day. And even if we have bad days, we still look at each other and say, at least we're still sitting together, having a casual dinner. High school came around and we started applying to colleges. And my principal was one of the most caring person and still is in my entire life. And she sat down with everyone that she really, really wanted to make a good college decision choice. And she asked me, so where do you want to go for college? And the story is the same for dreamers, that at one point we had high hopes that we could go to anywhere we want. And then reality came and you look at the numbers on tuition and you're just like, I cannot put that on my family, nor can I ever afford to pay that amount. Then I applied to several scholarships, full ride scholarship schools. And the first question I always ask them is, do I need to be a green card or a US citizen? Many of them says yes, that you have to be eligible for FAFSA. And then I came around one that didn't require. But that I didn't get accepted to that. Partly because my SAT scores in English, the English field wasn't too high. But he did refer me to another one. And that person personally gave me a call and said I was accepted. First thing I said was, okay, great. What do I need to complete the application? I'll send it to you or go to your office immediately. And he said, oh, just like your transcript and your report cards, and then and a copy of your birth certificate if you're born here, or your green card or whatever. And I remember I just broke down. But I had to hold back my tears because I had to thank him for the opportunity first. I thanked him. And I remember I put my phone back on my pillow and I just cried. I don't remember how long I cried for it, but I remember that I had to wear sunglasses to go out the next day. That was the beginning of a reality that hindered my dreams, my goals, and my life. And finally, 2012 came around and deferred action policy finally came through. I did my research right on June 15th and started gathering my documents. Then it almost came to a sudden realization that it was a dream too good to be true. That what do you mean suddenly I could apply for my real job, or that we don't have to be paid $4 an hour doing something that you know is brainless to you or is not relevant to your profession. And of course, the limitation was a 2 year and no guarantee of it extending or in any way guarantee that 2 years later maybe we get to feel the reality and feel the dream but not be able to live it. And suddenly you will have to wake up after that 2 year. I was approved 3 weeks ago. So that was very, very, very good point of my life. And I began searching for my real career. I didn't have to be paid under a table. I didn't have to be treated poorly. I could suddenly get benefits and actually be able to afford to go to a doctor and not have to buy over-the-counter medicines if I were able to get sick. I knew change was possible and we're so close. I didn't want someone else to fight my own battle, and I knew the Dream Fellow would give me the channel in which I could influence my fellow advocates to voice out concerns and make real change. There's nothing more accurate about the immigration bill than those who live the immigration life. My life has been filled with roadblocks and disappointments, and even so, I have hope. We all have hope. And with great confidence and incredible amount of support, such as today, we have full faith that we will be able to push through this immigration reform, and the Dream Fellow has certainly influenced my decision and my life on that. And thank you, Tanu, for all your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivy, and congratulations on your getting deferred action just 3 days. That's really wonderful. Our next speaker is Monica Sibri. Monica.
Good morning, everyone. I am Monica Sibri. And before I tell you something more about my story, I would like to tell you why I came here and how. And to do that, I would have to tell you about how my parents came here. My father left Ecuador in 2002. He was no longer able to economically support the family. He served in the Ecuadorian military and lost his job because new requirements were needed to keep his job, academic requirements. He needed a college degree, and he did not have it. He went to work as a bookkeeper at a candles company. He was able to obtain an economic stability for a pretty long time. But in 2000, the dollar currency changed to the American currency. My father lost his job. Then he tried to open his own business, but he wasn't able to afford it because everything was so expensive with the new currency. Then he decided to come to America. He came to search for a better life for him and our family. My mother followed him in 2003. We followed him a couple years after, right after my 16th birthday, 4 months after my 16th birthday. We were expecting to celebrate my birthday here, but it wasn't possible. How I found out I was undocumented. I found out I was undocumented when I was graduating from high school. I tried to apply for colleges, and they told me that I wasn't allowed to because I didn't have my documents. I did not tell anybody about my problem. Now it was a problem. I couldn't apply for anything. I went 4 or 5 hours walk and think about what I would do and how I would tell this to my parents. I got home, and when I told them, they were surprised because they never had an idea of how this process worked. They thought that the education process for college or any higher institution was the same as high school. They cried. I didn't cry. I was expecting them to give me an answer and to tell me what to do. But instead, I told them I will look for a solution and see what happens in the future. On June 15, 2002, President Obama announced about deferred action. I don't qualify for deferred action because I came 3 to 4 months after my 16th birthday. The lowest limits are very arbitrary. I don't know what I would do next. That's what I said when I was looking into this new deferred action that President Obama has given us. But then I had an interview with John from the New York Times, and I remember telling him that the only thing that relieves my pain is to cry. Well, I had cried enough, I said. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I went back to my school. I applied for the Emerging Leaders Program at the College of Staten Island, where I'll be graduating from next Thursday. It's a year program. I have increased my knowledge and leadership skills to advocate for my fellow dreamers. Let me clarify, the dreamers are not only students or young people. Dreamers are all of us that came to America to search for the American dream. I am a student at the College of Staten Island, trying to double major in political science and international studies. It gets difficult every day. There are expenses such as tuition, metro cards, a lot of things that I need to pay. The economic instability and eager to advocate for my fellow dreamers is what led me to apply for this fellowship. This Dream Fellowship has helped me to accomplish what I wanted after I left that interview with John from the New York Times. However, I am tired of watching my mother cry. She doesn't like what I'm doing. She's afraid that she will be deported one day. My mother was pregnant. In many moments she stated that she was scared, that she was going to get deported when she has her baby. She had her baby last Tuesday. 2 weeks ago, I went home and I told her that 8 senators had submitted a proposal for a comprehensive immigration reform. She cried and gave me a big smile. My father gave me an apple, and he said, "Eve, you cannot help if you don't eat and are healthy. Go to school." I felt like I was 5 years old again. I felt like I was going to celebrate my 16th birthday. However, I know that my mother's smile wasn't sincere. She's scared, but she keeps hoping that one day this is going to end. My mentor always says that it doesn't matter what road I take. If I have a goal that has been properly set, any path that I take will lead me to that goal. Yo he causado daño psicológico a mi familia y a mis hermanos, pero yo sé que al final de este año podré decirles que todo fue por una justa causa. I thank my parents for bringing me here, mentors, the NYSC, and every person who has helped me be where I am. My dream is to be able to have my own nonprofit here in America so that I can give back to the community that have helped me. However, I do not have the resources to do so because I do not have a paper. A comprehensive immigration reform gives me hope to accomplish my goals and bring peace to my mother's worries. If the act passes, it will no longer be just a dream. I will be able to continue my studies, my dream, and my future. With faith in God and hearing the voices of who supports me and motivates me every day, I know that together we will make our dreams possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. She has been one of the most promising leaders of the CUNY Student Senate and so many accomplishments, which she didn't even get to mention. And she's an inspiration every day. And one more reason why we have to pass immigration reform, because it's much broader than DACA and can help many, many more families. Next, I'd like to invite Daniel Yang to speak. Oh, Bill, how are you? We're going to take a little bit of a break from listening to the fellow stories and introduce someone very, very special. Sometimes the struggles of undocumented youth seem very lonely and in the shadows and nobody cares, right? But today we have a special guest, a citywide elected official who does care and has made our struggle much easier. And it's our privilege to have Bill de Blasio with us. He has been here from the beginning when we decided to create this fellowship, when the idea hatched. And since then, he has continued to be an outspoken supporter of the fellowship, of undocumented youth and families. So it is our privilege to have Bill de Blasio, New York City's public advocate, be with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, I have to say that Chung-Wha Hong is one of the great leaders in this city, giving voice to the needs of immigrants in this city, regardless of status. And that therefore makes you a true New York leader, because we are the ultimate city of immigrants. So I just want to say thank you to you, and let's give her a round of applause. You know, we think about living out our ideals, and then we see how far our current society is from that reality. When we started to partner with the Immigration Coalition, it was to right a wrong. And I have to thank Paula Gavin for her great work at the Fund for Public Advocacy and her predecessor, Reshma Saujani, because we saw an opportunity to partner with the coalition, not just to do something for some very worthy individuals, but to send a larger message that there is a fundamental unfairness that must be addressed. That if we don't address it, our society can't be whole. That we would leave behind some of the greatest talents we have here in our city, in our country. For all of you who won a fellowship, I offer my warmest congratulations and appreciation. I know it wasn't easy. I just got to hear Monica's story and Ivy's and Mehdi, am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay. And each story, there was a common thread that was very powerful. This just is so difficult. There's so much struggle for each individual trying to overcome both all the adjustments to life here and all the realities of a very competitive and challenging society and challenging economy, and on top of that, the reality of an unfair treatment, particularly of young people based on their status. And so we thought we could send a larger message, but we could also give a helping hand to some very, very worthy individuals. And then that would help them amplify their voices. So I think you all know this, but I say to all the fellows that we're hoping to strengthen your leadership. We're hoping to make your voices louder. You are examples, and I say this as a parent also. Any parent would be so proud to have a child like you. But we need people all over the city, all over this country to hear your story and to be inspired to change. Now, as I said, this is particularly true in a city that is the ultimate city of immigrants. More than a third of the people living here at this very moment were born elsewhere. They make this city as great as it is. It's not even a question to any of us. And in particular, our economy. The energy, the entrepreneurship, the creativity, and you see it in particular in the immigrant small business community. It is part of what has kept the city together in tough times. I have to tell you, this is personal for me too, because in previous generations, that was my grandparents. That was my wife Charlene's grandparents. Her grandparents came from Barbados almost 100 years ago. and found a way. My grandparents came from southern Italy. My grandmother started a dress shop with her mother and sister. It was a woman-owned business over 100 years ago here in Manhattan. And like everyone in this room can understand, they didn't have a lot of advantages, they didn't have a lot of help. It was about their strength and their perseverance. But we now need to take the steps to actually support people. In this state, regardless of what we are pushing for and waiting for on the federal level, we have a chance to make a huge difference in New York State with the DREAM Act. It is a priority. It's not just a priority to help people here and now in New York. It is a priority to send a message to the rest of the country. And all of us need to believe that we can overcome the political opposition and make an impact. And I want to tell you, there's been great, great leaders in Albany, like Senator Peralta and Assemblyman Moya, who have been leading the charge, and we have to have their back. The example we should uphold of why we need the DREAM Act is all of you. All of you allow us to show people in real human terms what this means and why it's so important, and why this is a necessary step on the way to a comprehensive immigration reform that will serve everyone. I thought Monica's story was particularly powerful because we have to reach the dreamers, but we have to remember the families of the dreamers are living in doubt and living in the pain of their unclear status. So this work doesn't stop until we succeed across the board. But in the here and now, let's use your example as the reason to pass a DREAM Act in this state. Y ahora necesito hablar en español. Estos estudiantes son el futuro nuestra ciudad. Cuando tienen éxito, todos tenemos éxito. Ningún joven debería tener la puerta a la educación cerrada debido a su estatus migratorio. Es por eso que hemos establecido esta beca y porque necesitamos el DREAM Act del Estado de New York. With that, I say a great congratulations to all of you and appreciation for your leadership. We will need it to keep making our city better and keep making our country better. Thank you.
How was his Spanish? Next, thank you, Bill, very much for being with us. Next, I'd like to invite up Alondra Ramos as our next fellow speaker.
Hi everyone. I will first start with a short story about myself in Spanish, and I will continue. Hola, mi nombre es Alondra Ramos. Nací en México, Baja California. Mis padres y yo nos venimos a los Estados Unidos para obtener una vida mejor cuando tenía 10 años. La pobreza que sufrimos en México fue nuestra motivación para vivir en un país extranjero. Hasta ahora le agradezco a mi madre por hacer esta decisión, porque gracias a ella he tenido tantas oportunidades como esta beca de New York Immigration Coalition. Gracias. I was born in Mexico. My parents divorced when I was very little, so my father was never part of my life. Since he didn't support us, my mother raised my siblings and I by herself until she met my stepfather, whom I always looked up to for taking us in even though we weren't Australian. He helped with the bills, but they still weren't constant. The money they were making for all the labor they did was just enough to put on the table, and that was it. They both worked tirelessly every day, and because of this, we never saw them. When I was 8 years old, my oldest brother died in a gun accident. While playing around with the gun, his best friend pulled the trigger, not knowing that the gun was loaded. My brother bled to death and never even made it to the hospital. This broke my family apart, but my mother was the one who took it the hardest. She said that it was time to change her lifestyle. She had lost precious times away from us for so long that it was breaking her apart. All the time she had lost being with my brother, she would make up with us for trying her hardest to give us a better life. So for 2 years after my brother's death, my mother tried desperately to obtain passports for all of us to move to the United States in the hopes of giving us a better life. Since it was all in vain, we decided to cross the border illegally. My younger brother and I were put in a school bus on its way to Disneyland. Since we made an arrangement with the teacher, telling her that we would be staying with relatives there and we would be back in a week, but we stayed. My parents, on the other hand, walked the hot desert for days. My mother had such a traumatic experience while in the desert that she still refuses to talk to me about it. But it makes me happy that when she sees how hard I work and all my accomplishments in school, she says she regrets nothing. My stepfather's family had been living in Arizona for years, so we decided to go live with them. My mother quickly found a job cleaning houses, and my father worked in a restaurant as a cook. My younger brother and I enrolled in school and learned English fairly quick. We loved the cafeteria lunch and the new friends we made. But what made it much better was that we got to see our parents much more. But life in Arizona was not all that wonderful. It became increasingly difficult as time went by because we lived with fear of deportation every day. People like Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Maricopa County were rounding up people and deporting them. They would stop anyone and ask them for documentation. They didn't have any. They would deport them without hesitation. Police committed crimes against undocumented people because they knew we were too afraid to speak up about the injustices being done. So my family and I took precautions daily. I wasn't allowed to go out too late or to go too far out of my neighborhood. When we shopped, it was in stores that we knew were friendly. My parents constantly watched the news for updates on the sheriff's latest atrocities so that we knew what neighborhoods to stay away from. And all of this was before Law SB 1070 was even a law. Back then, people still had a right to say no, officer, but nobody knew that because of the fear we all had. Law SB 1070 actually gave these so-called officers of the law to stop anyone who looked suspicious and ask for documentation, send them to detention centers and deport them. Hundreds of undocumented people are abused in these detention centers because nobody does anything. In Mexico, my brother and I were always told to watch out for kidnappers, murderers, strangers trying to give us candy. But in Arizona, my mother added the cops to that list. We just couldn't trust anyone. But what she always tried to make us understand was that there was a reason why we put up with all of those things. Why life in Arizona, even as bad as it seemed as time went on, was still better than living in the poverty that we lived in Mexico. People in Arizona didn't see that. And people still ask me, why are you and your family still living here if it's so difficult? And I reply with what my mother told me when I asked the same question. It's because the difficulties of living here as an undocumented citizen will never be as worse than the poverty and constant drug cartels that were going on in Mexico. That is why I moved to New York City when I had the chance. I hope that here, life for an undocumented student wouldn't be as difficult. Even though it would be sad to live without my family, we all knew that this was the best decision for my future. I left knowing that I wouldn't see them for years. But then again, this is why we left Mexico in the first place, so that my brother and I would have opportunities like this one. Now, thanks to President Obama, I'm looking forward to the results of my deferred action application in the hopes that I can travel back to Arizona to see my family again after 4 long years. I applied in December, and it's been about 4 months now. Although deferred action makes me happy because of this, my goal is to continue working with organizations like the NYC towards immigration reform for my family. I believe that if we push hard enough, like we all did in the rally in Washington, D.C., we will have one by the end of this year. I want my family to leave Arizona and come to New York City, where I believe they will also be accepted as I have been accepted. It is here in New York City that I've had countless opportunities for continuing my education. I enrolled at New York City College of Technology with the dream of one day becoming a registered architect and hopefully owning my own firm. Up until now, I've been babysitting for families and also received money from my parents and my family in Mexico to help pay for school. Every semester is an ongoing struggle to pay for classes, and thanks to scholarships like these, I am able to focus on my studies rather than worrying on a daily basis about payments. The NYC has given me things that I would otherwise be struggling to obtain because of my status, like help with my tuition and the opportunity to have a job experience as an intern. Organizations like these were never offered to me as an undocumented student in Arizona. Thanks to them, I'm much closer to obtaining my architectural degree. The NYC has been vital to my growth, both as a woman and as a struggling student. They have given me the confidence and support that I have been lacking in all my years living in the state of Arizona. So I'd like to officially thank them for all the amazing support they have given me throughout this semester. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're a real New Yorker now, and we welcome more family members to New York. Next, I'd like to invite up Daniel Yan, continuing the bilingual tradition. 양성모 학생 올라와서 연설해 주시죠. 감사합니다.
Hello everyone. 안녕하세요. My name is Daniel 성모예. I'm currently a senior major in political science at Baruch. And through the Dream Fellowship, I like to work as an immigration advocacy at the New York Immigration Coalition here. So first, I came to America at the age of 10, just a couple of months before the September 11 attacks. Our family, which consisted of me, my older brother, and my mother, settled down in a small town in New Jersey called Palisades Park, which is another small little Korean town. And for me, everything was bearable. Being the only kid in the class who didn't know how to speak English or write in English, or even just eating oily or salty American food. Everything was just fine for me. But however, one thing that just I couldn't really cope was when people started treating me differently. Because I didn't speak English, or because the color of my face was different. I remember being excluded from playing basketball with other friends, or joining the spelling bee contest. And I just couldn't bear when the treatment to me was sort of like they're treating me as if I were a second-class citizen. And also, as soon as we got here, our family already seeing what our cousins already went through. We knew that we would follow the same path as they did, leading an undocumented life. It was a limitation that my family and I had to accept naturally. That's why even when I applied to colleges, or some of my friends going to missions overseas, I was never dismayed by the fact that I couldn't do what others were capable of doing. But I remember this one event that struck me the most was last summer actually, the Independence Day. It was one hot sun-scorching day, filled with barbecues and hanging out with families. But I still headed to work. I was working as a sandwich man at a deli in Union Square, and it was because I had to raise money to pay off my college tuition. And I remember getting on the A train going downtown. I was looking on the train. It was full of families, couples going to places, and by just looking at the scene, it really hurt me. I felt a pang of anger and shame that I could not bear. And just the fact that I could not live like a regular American, and that I couldn't rest up on a regular holiday or just having fun with my family, and it really hurt me. And so I lamented my lack of status, and I broke down in the middle of the train ride. And I asked myself, why is it that I have to go through a life like this when I could intern or work through the summer and live a comfortable life as my friends are doing? And from then on, I resolved to myself that I'll do whatever that I could do to let this not happen to my children. And from that day on, I worked diligently and applied myself in school, and which reinforced my idea of going to law school after I graduated, and become a prosecutor and help others in need, and also especially to prevent others from experiencing what I had to go through. And especially as an undocumented student, struggling with the legal process and seeing the immigration reform bill getting started in the Congress, I grew a desire to learn more about the public policy making process. So that is why, upon learning about the Dream Fellowships program, I applied with no hesitation. And fortunately, I was accepted, and I'm really thankful to the donors of the fellowship and the staffs of the affiliated immigration organizations. And I got to learn more about the in and outs of policy making process, and also how to make coalition and build organization helps all around the communities. And most of all, just the fact that I could confidently say that I'm part of the immigration reform movement. It's an honor and pride that I take dearest to my heart. And also, with the knowledge that I gained through the fellowship and this network of dreamers right here, I'm confident to say that I've become an active young man with a compassionate heart. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Susan Lima as our next fellow.
Hi everyone, good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here and for having your attention and your interest in our stories. So as I said, my name is Susan. I'm a dreamer, which also became known as an undocumented student. But I can say I'm documented now because I was approved in December, thankfully for Obama's. Yay! I'm happy to apply for my driver's license. So I came to the United States when I was 5 years old because my dad wanted his only daughter, which is me, to obtain an education he was not fortunate enough to pursue in Ecuador. He arrived to the U.S. before I did and worked multiple jobs and worked endless hours as a dishwasher, as a delivery boy, in order for me to provide money so I could attend pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade and second grade. Because in Ecuador, there's not a lot of public schools, so you have to go to private school. And so as time passed, my dad was depressed because he didn't have his wife and his daughter with him. So he planned it out like a short-term plan in order to bring my mom to the U.S. So a day before my mom had to come to the U.S. with my aunt, which is my dad's sister, my aunt started freaking out. She was like, I can't do it. she's like, I don't want to go, I can't do it. And there was a seat left, and within a couple of hours, my dad was like, we can't sort of lose this money. So what he did, he was like, let's just take Susan, let's just do it. And I was like, okay, I don't even know what I'm doing, 5 years old. Let's embark on this journey. And so I do have a few flashbacks about how we were crossing a few of the borders. I remember once the coyote, as we call it, the person who takes us over, he was like, hide behind this. And I'm like, why are we hiding? What's the purpose? I'm like, what are we scared of? And I was like, you know what, forget about it. I want to see what we're running away from. And all I see is the police or the cops. And I'm like, cool, like, this is what we're scared of, but why? And so all these questions always arise, like, why are we doing this? But I knew that, I always knew once we stepped into the U.S. that I was undocumented. I felt the pressure that, not the pressure, but being, in other words, in the psychological, being pressured by my parents, like, you can't say who you are, like, your status. And I always knew it because I had younger cousins who were privileged because they were citizens and they were able to go back to Ecuador. And when I saw them, I would leave them in the airport and I would feel very depressed and sad because I couldn't sort of enjoy those luxuries of trips. And I was like, oh, why can't I go? Like, I'm going to school, I'm being a good kid. Why can't I do it? And so those years and most people think that because you came at such a young age that you're able to adapt to the American culture very easily. But unfortunately, in my situation, it took me so I'm not gonna say even actually half a decade in order to sort of sequence into the American sort of culture. When I was 10 years old, they did an assessment for my English, and they sort of found out that my vocabulary was for a 5-year-old. Like, I hadn't been able to adapt very easily to my school level, and so I always had speech classes and resource additionally to the education that I had to have. And I sort of realized, well, why am I doing this? I was like, I guess being undocumented sort of pushed me into not wanting to learn the language. But after a few years, I realized I was in 5th grade. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? My parents brought me here so I can enjoy this luxury of going to school. And so I was like, that's when I started grasping. I was like, I want to be the top student in my classes. But it was hard because once you have those 5 years delay, you can't rapidly just from morning to night learn the language like that. And so it took me a while, but I was able, and now that I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh, she's like a New Yorker, it's no problem. So I guess I was able to learn very quickly. And so I'm very thankful, but then when I was in high school, it wasn't until my junior year, that I sort of realized that, there's colleges that, if you want to be someone in the future, you have to pursue a professional career. And so that's when it really, most of you, you break down, because there were endless opportunities for you to apply, but those 9 digits sort of put you into this room, and you couldn't open the doors to where you wanted to follow. And so I remember one of my teachers saying, there's an internship for you at Apple, there's an internship for you here, there's an internship and we want to qualify you for it. She's like, out of everybody, we picked 3 students that we wanted to go, and that's the time when I had to open up. I'm like, I can't do it. They're like, what are you talking about? You have the, you're smart, you're outgoing. And I was like, well, there's this situation, and I didn't want to say, I'm undocumented, but I had to tell her like sign language. I'm like, I don't have this, showing her the application. She couldn't connect it at first, but then she's like, wait, so you can't work here, or you can't? I was like, yeah, I don't have this. I was like, showing it to her because I didn't want to say it. It's not being embarrassed, but just in that fear of saying it. So she's like, oh, okay. She's like, so you can't do this? And I was like, no. And she's like, well, I have this. I was like, I think that's gonna ask for the same papers. And she's like, oh. And so going through that sort of, gives me a lot of saying why, again, asking these questions. And those were the times when I also, I was a top student, but it was a time when I was like, why am I studying so hard? Why am I getting hundreds on all my math exams? Because I was a little stronger in math than in English, but I was like, but why am I doing this if I can't even get a scholarship, or I can't even get an internship where I'm able to sort of give out all my talent to, to pursue? And so I started like flunking some of my exams, started like going through a depression, which is very horrible, where to a point where you want to sort of like say, why do I even exist here? And so thankfully with the support of my family and friends and teachers, they kept pushing me and telling me, and they, you know, they took me outside, they're like, why are you sort of, you know, getting lower grades when you're a top A student? And I was like, well, do you know how it feels to be in the situation where you want to do so much, but you're still limited to doing it? But it was with their support that I was able to sort of, I wasn't even gonna apply for college, and I just did it because, you know, you wanna do it for your parents. And I did it, and I didn't get accepted to the school that I wanted to, but thankfully I was able to, I applied to City Tech, and I was able to get my associate's degree from there, and now I'm pursuing my dreams of being at Baruch College and pursuing my math degree. And thankfully, with the New York Dream Fellowship, I'm able to follow it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Each story is so inspiring. Now we have 3 more fellows. We have Hina Navi as our next speaker. You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Hina Navi. I am 22 years old, and I'm originally from Pakistan. My family immigrated to the United States when I was just 10 years old in order to seek medical treatment for my older sister. She had undergone brain surgery in India, and the after effects of the radiation were steadily worsening. She received treatment at a hospital in Long Island and then later on at Boston Children's Hospital. During the course of her treatment, our lawyer misfiled our petition, resulting in a denial and an order to leave within 30 days. My sister's doctors advised us that any interruption in her treatment would be extremely detrimental to her health, and because of which my father decided to overstay. A decision that led to my sister still being alive and with us today, 13 years longer than what was expected at that time. I chose to apply to this fellowship for multiple reasons. Firstly, being an undocumented immigrant who has been in the shadows for so long, immigration reform is a cause that's very personal and close to my heart. I felt that New York Immigration Coalition would allow me to finally step out of the shadows of shame, fear, and helplessness that comes with being undocumented. It would allow me to share my story on my own terms and help others like me finally be able to come out and own our stories. Like many other families, we're a mixed status family. My younger sister is just 8 years old and she was born here. She's too young to understand the significance or the importance of comprehensive immigration reform, but she's old enough to know the consequences of what happens when you break up families. She accompanied my 2 brothers and I on the Keeping Families Plus tour, Keeping Families Together bus tour last month to Washington, D.C. to help lobby for support from congressmen. It was our first trip to Washington, D.C., and it was heartbreaking to hear the stories of many families that have mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters that are currently in deportation proceedings right now. The entire trip strengthened my resolve to be involved in the push for comprehensive immigration reform. Additionally, the scholarship opportunity that comes with this fellowship is a great incentive. As an undocumented student, we all know we're not eligible for scholarships, for grants, for loans, or for a lot of other opportunities that are available to other people that are documented. The scholarship opportunity that comes with this fellowship greatly eased the financial burden for paying for my education out of pocket. As a New York Immigration Coalition Dream Fellow, I have received valuable leadership training courses, like she mentioned. I actively participated in lobby visits, attended my first ever immigration rally, finally got to go to DC, and also attended a Senate hearing. I'm truly grateful for the opportunities I was provided, as well as the tools I received, and we all received through the leadership trainings, as well as our internship programs. I would like to thank New York Immigration Coalition for allowing me to be a part of this amazing fellowship. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I remember, I think Hina's sister is the youngest ever lobbyist to walk the halls of Congress, so thanks for enlisting your entire family. Our next speaker is Tang-Lin Xiao. Tang-Lin?
Hi, my name is Tang-Lin Xiao. I'm 21 years old, and I'm from Fujian, China. My father left me to America when I was only 1 month old, and when I was in kindergarten, my mom came to America to schools each time. By the age of 14 and a half, I finally traveled to the United States from Taiwan and met up with my long-lost parents and 3 younger American-born siblings. I work 30 hours a week while attending in school full-time. My parents cannot afford me financially to go to college because they both are working-class undocumented immigrants. And they have to take care of 3 of my younger siblings. However, I want to be the first person from my family to go to college. I know what my goal is. I firmly believe that I can achieve academically and will become a successful teacher. I have been active since high school and participated in many activities involving leadership since then. I received my DACA a few months ago and finally don't have to borrow extra money from my cousin for tuition. I'm in 4 years college now. The instead of tuition I'm paying now is close to the out-of-state tuition I paid before. Every time when I feel stressful because of financial problem, I tell myself, telling, you're not going to give up your career. You are going to achieve, and you can be a successful teacher, and you don't want to work in restaurant 12 hours a day and 6 days a week. So my faith supports me to continue my academic dream. I had transferred between 13 different schools in many different places. I don't belong to anywhere but America. I did not live with my parents until I came to America at the age of 14. I did not have a home until I came to America. I did not stay at anywhere longer than I'm in America. And I did not have a dream until I came to America. That dream ends. I want to be an American citizen. As an undocumented student who has been paying out-of-state tuition for 3 years, I've been looking for scholarships all the time. I'm qualified for all the eligibility of scholarship that I had applied, except for one thing: United States citizen or permanent resident. Luckily, I'm chosen by NYIC and became one of the Dream Fellow of 2013. NYIC had not only helped me to develop my thought on immigration issues, but also provide me with many significant opportunities that I might never had the chance to able to participate with, such as leadership training with you guys, and Congressmember visits, rally in Washington, D.C., Albany Days, and much more. I greatly appreciate these hands-on experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our final speaker is Maria Vera.
Hi, my name is Maria. I'm a senior at Hunter. I came here when I was 5 years old for my first time so I could meet my mother, who had left Ecuador when I was 1 year old. I traveled back and forth several times until I was 8 years old, and my great-grandfather passed away. And so my grandmother, who was taking care of me, got really sick. So there was nobody to take care of me, and my mom had to make the decision. Either I go to Ecuador and live in several houses of my relatives, or stay here in America. So her options were very limited, and she knew that it would affect me. But she decided to make me stay here. I cried for 1 month, every single day. I tried running away, but just because I wanted to go back to Ecuador. However, after a while, I noticed that I didn't really have no option. So in 3 months, I learned English with the help of my teachers and with my mother, because she knew English since she was an English teacher in Ecuador. At that age, I did not know what it was to be undocumented. I did not feel any different from anybody else that I knew until I was in high school. But I became determined to work hard so I could have a bright future and be able to provide back to this country and my mother for making the right decision. I have worked hard since I entered the New York system of education. I've always ranked top of my class, part of honor societies, as well as giving back to my community by being part of community service. So I grew up with the idea that if I work hard, I will get places. When it came to college applications, since I was so involved in getting high grades, the principal gave me a scholarship to provide my full tuition. My other teacher came and she gave me another scholarship, and then that's when I had to tell them that I couldn't accept these scholarships and had to give them to my other friend that I knew. So they found an alternative and they gave me other scholarships, but they didn't pay my full tuition. I was accepted to all the college choices that I wanted to, but my options were limited. I got accepted to John Jay, the only CUNY I applied for. And I was offered to be part of the honors program. However, I transferred to Hunter where I attend today. I applied to the Dream Fellowship because I wanted to be able to give back to the community and relate to people that have undergone the same experiences as me. Also, I want to be able to give back to the community. I want to thank the New York Immigration Coalition for the experience and the knowledge they have given me. It has been an amazing experience with them. It has given me the confidence to go out in public for the first time and be able to talk about my case. Today, I can say American has shaped the person I am today. I have accomplished one of my many goals. On May 29, I will be graduating top 15 of my class with my bachelor's degree in sociology and departmental honors in psychology. Thanks to deferred action, I have been able to apply for jobs and I have been able to get several interviews for job offers. It has brightened my future and I have continued to be able to have hope. However, I am not done reaching my goals. I'm not even near finished to my contribution to America for everything it has provided me.
Imagine how much everyone could contribute if you guys are only 21, 22 now and have done so much for our communities. I want to recognize Tanu Yakubutiade, who is our program our entire fellowship programming possible with her incredible dedication and just kind of personal love and commitment to each one of you fellows. Karen Kaminsky overseeing our entire programming. I want to close the press conference today by noting that together with all of you, we will not stop our fight until the President signs immigration reform into law and until the Governor signs the New York State DREAM Act into law. So thank you so much.